Welcome to Learning English Every Day. Today, we enter a library where the stories are not written on paper, but in the very air you breathe. My name is Amy. I am 28 years old. I live in a world of absolute heavy darkness. When I was 5 years old, the lights went out for me forever. I remember the last thing I saw, a bright yellow butterfly on a purple flower. Then, everything became a thick black wall. At first, I was terrified. I felt like a bird in a cage with no windows. I would sit on the floor and cry because I couldn't find my mother's face. But one afternoon, while I was crying, I felt a change. I couldn't see my mother, but I smelled her. I smelled the warm, sweet vanilla of the cookies she was baking. I smelled the fresh lavender on her apron. I realized then that her scent was more her than her face ever was. Her scent was a map. Her scent was a hug. The world told me I was broken, but I was just learning a new language. When you lose your sight, your other senses don't just stay the same. They wake up like sleeping giants. They become sharp like a silver needle. They become powerful like a deep ocean tide. To you, a rose is a beautiful red flower you see with your eyes. To me, a rose is a heavy, velvet vibration of sweetness that tells me it is summer. I don't look at the world. I breathe it into my soul. I have worked in this library for 5 long years. It is a small shop tucked away in a narrow, winding alley. Most people walk past the heavy oak door without looking. They are too busy looking at their phone screens. They are chasing money, schedules, and shadows. But those who are truly lost, they always find the door. They don't follow a GPS. They follow a feeling in the air. Above the door, there is a small wooden sign, the Library of Scents. Inside, the walls are covered from the floor to the high dark ceiling with shelves. There are more than 10,000 small glass bottles here. They are like a choir of glass, chime, tinkle, clink. They sing to each other whenever the wind moves the curtains. These bottles are not full of liquid, they are full of moments. Cobalt blue bottles for memories of the ocean. Emerald green for childhood forests, deep amber for the golden hours of a first love. I am not just a shopkeeper. I am a librarian of the human heart. I help people find the one thing they thought they had lost forever. People ask me, "How do you organize 10,000 smells, Amy?" I tell them, I do not use letters or numbers. I organize them by the weight they have on a soul. The left wall is the gallery of beginnings. It holds the smell of a new baby's skin, milky, soft, and full of promise. It holds the scent of a new house before the furniture arrives, the smell of fresh wood and hope. The right wall is the gallery of the everyday. It smells of rain on hot asphalt and the steam of a Monday morning tea. But the back corner, that is the most important part of the library. It is the gallery of the unspoken. This shelf holds scents that the world has no words for. The smell of a promise kept for 50 years. The smell of the exact moment you realize you are forgiven. The smell of a child's drawing that their parents kept in a drawer. I can feel the energy of these bottles through the glass. They hum with a low, steady frequency. They are waiting for someone to come and release them. They are waiting for a person who is brave enough to remember. On a Tuesday afternoon, the air was heavy and wet. The silver bell above the door made a soft, sharp sound. Tink. I was sitting at the counter, and I felt the air move. I smelled him before he even took his first step toward me. He did not smell like the city. He did not smell like gasoline or cold coffee. He smelled of very expensive soap, old, dusty paper, and a deep, heavy grayness. It was the scent of a man whose mind was like a room with no lamps. I could hear his jewelry, a heavy gold watch hitting his wrist. Click. It was the sound of a man who owned a lot of things, but owned nothing at all. "Welcome to the library," I said softly. His footsteps were slow and very uncertain. Thud, thud, thud. He stopped a few feet away, and his breathing was fast and shallow. I am looking for something," he whispered. His voice was like the sound of dry leaves moving on a stone floor. I could smell the anxiety coming off him like heat. "Everyone here is looking for something, sir." I replied, "My name is Amy. Do not be afraid of the silence here." The man stayed silent for a long time. I could smell the salt of a single tear falling down his cheek. "My name is Mr. White," he finally said. "I am a rich man. I have a soft bed. I have the best food. But I woke up this morning and I didn't know who the man in the mirror was. I have lost my home, Amy. Not the building, but the feeling of being me." Mr. White reached into the pocket of his heavy wool coat. I heard the sound of paper crinkling. Crinkle, snap. "I have this," he said, his hand shaking. He placed a small piece of paper in my hand. My fingers explored the texture of the object. It was an old photo. The edges were torn and sharp like a broken heart. The surface was rough and scratched, as if it had been touched 1,000 times. "I can't see the faces anymore," he sobbed. "The ink has faded. The sun has stolen the smiles. The people in this photo are just white ghosts now. But I remember that the day this was taken, it was the best day of my life. I remember there was a garden. I remember I was happy. If I can just find that day again, I think I can find my soul." I held the photo to my nose and took a deep, slow breath. The paper was too old. The scent of the people who held it was gone. It only smelled of dust, old glue, and the heavy, cold weight of time. "I cannot find your life from this paper, Mr. White," I said honestly. The eyes look at a photo and see a lie. They see what is gone. But the nose looks for the truth that is still there. We have 10,000 bottles in this room. We have the history of every emotion captured in glass. We will open them, one by one. We will search through the lake, the kitchen, and the forest. We will find the scent that makes your heart wake up and say, "I am home." I reached out and I took his cold, shaking hand. He was a powerful man in the city, but here he was just a child in the dark. "Don't be afraid, Mr. White," I whispered. "In this library, your nose is the only light you will ever need." I led him toward the first shelf on the left. The air was still. The bottles were waiting. And the journey into the deep sea of memory was about to begin. I led Mr. White to a high shelf made of dark, polished cedar wood. The air in this section of the library was cooler than in the front of the shop. It smelled of old stones, deep winter nights, and the profound silence of sleeping mountains. I reached up my hand, moving it slowly through the air. I didn't need to count the shelves or read the labels with my fingers. I felt the temperature of the glass bottles. Every bottle in this library has its own unique vibration. Every scent has its own weight and its own heartbeat. My fingers moved across them like a master pianist's hands moving across a silent keyboard. Swish, swish. I stopped at a small, round bottle. It was made of frosted blue glass, and it felt heavy and cold in my palm. "This is the first door, Mr. White," I whispered. I took a small glass rod and dipped it into the clear liquid inside. I held the rod a few inches from his nose, moving it in a small, slow circle. "I want you to do something very difficult now," I said. Do not think about that faded photo in your pocket. Do not try to search for a name, a date, or a face. Names are just labels created by the mind. Faces are just pictures that can lie. Just let the molecules enter your blood. Let them talk to your bones. Tell me the first color you see in the darkness of your mind. Mr. White took a deep, shaky breath. Inhale. The room went completely silent. Even the ticking of the old clock on the wall seemed to stop its heavy heartbeat. For a long moment, I could smell the change in his body chemistry. The scent of gray anxiety and cold confusion began to fade. It was being replaced by something bright, sharp, and very, very young. I see. Green, Mr. White whispered. His voice was no longer like dry leaves moving on stone. It was becoming wet, fresh, and full of a strange energy. I see a lot of green, and I see a silver light hitting the water like a million diamonds. I smell wild mint. And the cold, sharp water of a mountain lake. He closed his eyes so tightly that his face was full of deep wrinkles. I am a boy again, he said, and a small, pure smile broke across his face. I am 10 years old. I have a bicycle with a rusty chain and one missing pedal. I remember this day so clearly. It was the summer of my 10th birthday. I wanted a new red bicycle more than anything else in the world. I spent all summer collecting glass bottles from the ditches to earn the money. I had a large glass jar on my desk, and I would listen to the sound of every penny hitting the bottom. Clink, clink. But then, one evening, I heard my mother crying in the kitchen. We couldn't pay the electricity bill. The house was going to be dark. I took my jar of coins, my red bicycle dream, and I put it on the kitchen table. I didn't get the bicycle, but that afternoon my mother took me to the lake. We sat in the wild mint. And she told me that a man's worth is not in what he owns, but in what he gives to the people he loves. Mr. White reached out his hand into the air, as if he were trying to catch a ghost from 40 years ago. I remember the smell of the tomato soup she was making that night. It was the smell of safety. It was the smell of being enough. But Amy, why did I leave that feeling behind? Why did I stop being that boy? I took the blue bottle away and closed the lid with a soft click. Sometimes we leave a place because we are afraid of being small, I said softly. We think that if we have more, we will finally be more. But the world is a hungry giant, Mr. White. If you feed it your soul, it will never be satisfied. It will only ask for more until you are empty. We moved together to the center of the library. This was the gallery of the noon Sunday. The scents here were stronger, heavier, and much more complicated. They were the scents of power, ambition, and the terrible weight of great success. I chose a square bottle made of dark, thick amber glass. It smelled of expensive Italian leather, cold silver, and old bitter tobacco. It was the scent of a man who had won every battle but had lost the entire war. Breathe this, and do not look away from the pain it brings, I commanded. Mr. White breathed in the heavy scent of the amber bottle. His body became stiff and hard immediately. His shoulders became high and tight, as if he were carrying a heavy stone on his back. I could hear his gold watch hitting his wrist again in the silence. Click, click. The sound was fast, rhythmic, and full of a terrible nervousness. I am in a high office, he said, his voice becoming hard, metallic, and cold. I am wearing a suit that cost $5,000, but it feels like a cage of wire. I am looking at a city made of glass through a giant cold window. I have 3 phones ringing at the same time, all of them screaming for my attention. I am shouting at people I don't even know. I am telling them that time is a weapon. I am telling everyone that money is the only god that matters. I am looking at a contract. I am signing my name in thick black ink that looks like blood. I remember this specific moment. My daughter was calling me. It was her graduation day. She was crying. She wanted me to just be there for 1 hour. But I looked at the contract, and I looked at the ticking clock on the wall. I chose the paper. I chose the gold watch. I chose the power, I told her. Later, sweetheart. I'm building an empire for your future. His voice began to crack and splinter like a piece of breaking glass. But now I realize I wasn't building a future. I was only building a wall. In this office, there is no mint. There is no mother. There is no soup. There is only the dry smell of air conditioning and a cold metal desk. I have a family in my memory. But they are just silent, frozen photos on a wall. I touched his arm. His skin felt like cold marble under my fingertips. This is what the world sees as success, Mr. White, I whispered. The world sees the amber glass and the shining watch. But the soul does not live in a schedule or a bank account. The soul is the thing that you left behind at the Lake of Wild Mint. Mr. White sat down on a small wooden stool in the corner of the aisle. He put his face in his hands, and his breathing was loud and ragged in the silence. My mind is a disaster area, Amy, he whispered. I have all this money in the bank. I have houses and cars, but I can't remember the scent of my wife's hair. I look at that photo in my pocket and I feel a giant, cold hole in the center of my chest. Why did my brain delete the most important parts of my life? I sat down on the floor next to him and I leaned my head back against the rows of glass. Memory is a protective animal, Mr. White, I explained softly. When a moment is too painful, too shameful, or too full of regret, the brain creates a wall. It uses the eyes to build that wall. It says, do not look at that face because it will make you cry. So the eyes stop seeing, the mind goes gray and foggy. But the nose is a rebel. The nose is the only part of us that is always honest. The nose is connected to the oldest, deepest part of our being. Far beneath the logic, it is connected to our survival and our deepest capacity for love. You can hide a picture in a dark drawer, but you cannot hide a scent from your own breath. Every time you breathe, the molecules are searching for the truth of who you were. We are not looking for your physical house today. We are looking for the permission to forgive the man you became. You must decide if you are brave enough to feel the weight of the truth. I walked to a secret corner of the shop, hidden behind a heavy, dark velvet curtain. This shelf was for the scents of the unfinished. The bottles here were small, black, and very heavy. They did not sing, they did not chime in the wind. They were silent and still, like stones taken from a deep, forgotten riverbed. I picked up a bottle that smelled of burnt wood, cold chocolate, and winter rain. This is the scent of a choice that cannot be unmade, I said, my voice heavy. Mr. White took the bottle with trembling fingers. He opened the cap, and the air in the room suddenly became thick and suffocating. I remember a night, he whispered. It was raining. It was a Friday night 3 years ago. I had a meeting in the city. A multi-million-dollar deal that I had chased for a year. But it was my wife's 50th birthday. She had made a cake. A chocolate cake with sea salt and lavender. I could smell the sweetness through the phone when she called me to ask where I was. She was wearing a purple dress, the one I said made her look like a queen. She was waiting by the window, watching the rain hit the glass. I told her I couldn't come home. I told her the deal was more important than a cake. I told her she was being emotional and unrealistic about the business world. He stopped, and he made a choking, wet sound in his throat that hurt my ears. I stayed in the city. I won the deal. I became even richer than I was before. I came home at midnight with a diamond necklace that cost a small fortune. But the house was dark. The air was silent. The cake was still on the table, cold and hard as a rock. The chocolate didn't smell like a celebration. It smelled like a funeral. And my wife, she was gone. She didn't leave an angry note. She didn't scream at me. She just took her scent, her laughter, and her purple dress, and she walked out of my life. I haven't seen her or heard her voice for 3 years. I think my brain forgot her face because I couldn't live with the shame of what I saw in her eyes that night. Mr. White stood up suddenly, his wooden chair falling backward with a loud clatter. The black bottle fell from his shaking hand and shattered on the floor. Crash. The smell of burnt wood, cold chocolate, and old rain filled the entire room. It was a terrible smell, the smell of a heart finally admitting its own death. "I am a monster, Amy," he shouted, his voice echoing off the thousands of glass bottles. "I chose the glass buildings. I chose the gold watch over the people who loved me. I forgot her face because I am a coward who cannot look at his own sins. I am just a rich ghost walking through an empty world of cold money." He turned to run toward the door, his heavy wool coat flapping like the wings of a trapped bird. He wanted to go back to the gray darkness of his amnesia. He wanted to hide from the mirrors of this library forever. But I was faster than his fear. I reached out and I grabbed the lapels of his expensive coat with both hands. "Wait, Mr. White," I shouted, my voice cutting through his panic like a knife. "The library is not finished with you yet. You cannot leave until the story is told. You have found the mint of your youth. You have found the leather of your greed. You have found the bitter chocolate of your regret. But there is one more bottle in this room. A bottle that has been waiting. It has been waiting for you for 3 long, silent years. It is the reason your soul led you through that door today." I let go of his coat slowly. The room was vibrating with the chaotic energy of the shattered black bottle. The air was thick with the scent of a broken life and a broken man. But in the very back corner, on a shelf that the sun never touched, a single blue bottle began to glow. It was the scent of lilacs and rain. It was the scent of a woman who was still standing by a window, somewhere in the world, still hoping. "One more breath, Mr. White," I whispered, my voice as soft as raw silk. "One more breath, and you will finally, truly, find your way home." The black bottle lay in pieces on the floor, its bitter scent of regret thick in the air. Mr. White stood before me, his chest moving up and down like a wounded animal. He wanted to run. He wanted to go back to the world where he knew nothing. He wanted to return to his empty mansion and his gold watch, because the truth was too loud, the pain was too sharp. "I can't do it, Amy," he whispered, his voice cracking like dry wood. "I am too old to change. I am too far gone in the darkness." I stayed very still. I did not reach out to grab him again. I knew that if I forced him, he would only build a new wall. "Mr. White," I said softly, "look into the corner. Do you see the blue light? Your eyes cannot see it, but your heart can feel the temperature. There is a bottle that has been waiting for you. It has survived 3 years of your silence. It is the only thing in the universe that can bridge the distance between who you are and who you were. I walked toward the very back of the library. My fingers moved across the shelves, sensing the heartbeat of the glass. I stopped at a small, elegant bottle made of deep cobalt glass. It felt warm to the touch, as if a candle was burning inside it. I picked it up and held it toward him. "This is not a bottle of regret," I said. "This is a bottle of waiting." Mr. White walked toward me slowly, his footsteps heavy and hesitant. He reached out his trembling hand and took the blue bottle. He held it as if it were a fragile bird that might fly away. "What is it?" he asked, his voice a tiny whisper. "It is the scent of a promise," I replied. "It is the scent of the woman you forgot." Mr. White opened the silver cap. Tink. For a long moment, nothing happened. The air in the room seemed to freeze, and then the scent escaped. It was not heavy like the leather or sharp like the mint. It was soft, light, and incredibly clean. It was the scent of lilacs and rain. It was the smell of a garden waking up in the early morning. It was the smell of a woman's skin after she had spent all day in the sun. It was the smell of laundry drying in a spring breeze. Mr. White took a deep, deep breath. His eyes opened wide, and for the first time, the gray fog in his pupils disappeared. A bright, clear light returned to his face. "Claire," he whispered. The name fell from his lips like a prayer. I remember her name. I remember her face. He began to speak, but he was no longer in the library. He was back in the spring of 2021. "It is our garden," he said, his voice full of a beautiful, painful joy. "We have 3 lilac trees. One for every 10 years we have been married. Claire is standing under the middle tree. She is wearing her favorite purple dress, the one she made herself. She has a pair of old gardening scissors in her hand. She is cutting a small branch for the kitchen table. She hears my car, and she turns around. She smiles at me, but I don't get out of the car. I am looking at my phone. I am shouting at my assistant about a shipping contract. I don't look at the flowers. I don't look at her. I roll down the window and I shout, 'I have to go back to the city, Claire. Don't wait for dinner, Mr. White's voice began to tremble with tears. She didn't get angry. She didn't shout back. She just stood there in the rain with the purple dress and the lilacs. She held up the flowers toward the car, but I had already rolled up the window. I drove away. I left her standing in the mud. I never saw her smile again. But Amy, the smell of those lilacs. It was her way of saying, I will always be here. She wasn't gone. She was just waiting for me to stop the car. Mr. White sat down on the floor, surrounded by the shadows of 10,000 bottles. He looked at his gold watch, the one he had protected more than his own heart. I spent my life building a castle made of glass, he sobbed. I thought that if I was the richest man in the city, no one could hurt me. I thought that silence was power, but I was just a prisoner of my own greed. I forgot her face because I couldn't face the man I had become. I hid in the fog because the sun was too honest. I knelt down next to him. I could smell the salt of his tears. It was a clean smell, the smell of a soul being washed. The fog is gone now, David, I whispered. You are no longer Mr. White, the businessman. You are David, the boy from the lake, the man who loves Claire. The memory is no longer a shackle. It is a map. David looked up at me. I could feel his gaze on my face. Why did you help me, Amy? You don't even know me. I smiled and touched the wooden shelf behind me. In this library, no one is a stranger. I said, we are all just searchers looking for our own frequency. I lost my eyes when I was 5, but I found the world in the air. I wanted to show you that even in the dark, you are never truly lost. You just have to be brave enough to take a breath. David stood up. He felt different. He felt light. He reached for the blue bottle, but I shook my head. You don't need the bottle anymore, David. I said, the scent is now inside your blood. It is in your heart. David looked at the small cobalt bottle, then he looked at the expensive gold watch on his wrist. He slowly unbuckled the leather strap. Click! He placed the watch on the small round table, right where the blank photo had been. I don't need to know the time anymore, he said firmly. I only need to know where she is. Keep this, Amy. Sell it. Give it to someone who needs to buy a dream. I am going to find the garden. I am going to find the woman in the purple dress. He walked toward the heavy oak door. Before he left, he stopped and looked back at the library. Thank you for the light, Amy, he said. The silver bell above the door made a soft, happy sound. Tink. David walked out into the cool evening air. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look for his driver. He just began to walk toward the north side of the city, following the ghost of a scent. The rain began to fall again, soft and rhythmic. It was the same rain from the memory. David walked for 2 hours. His expensive shoes were ruined by the mud. His suit was soaked and heavy. But he felt like a king. He reached the small wooden house at the edge of the woods. The house was dark, but the garden was alive. The 3 lilac trees were tall and full of blossoms. In the moonlight, the flowers looked like clouds of violet smoke. A woman was standing on the porch. She was older now. Her hair was touched with silver, but she was wearing a purple dress. She was holding a cup of tea, watching the rain hit the grass. David stopped at the white wooden gate. He didn't speak. He didn't shout. He just took a branch of lilacs that was hanging over the fence. He breathed in the scent, and he smiled. The woman turned her head. She looked at the man in the rain. She saw the mud. She saw the empty wrist where the gold watch used to be. But most of all, she saw the boy who had come home from the lake. She put down her tea. Her hands were shaking. David? She whispered. David opened the gate. Creak. I'm late, Claire, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm 3 years late for the sunset. Claire walked down the steps into the rain. She didn't care about her dress. She didn't care about the storm. She threw her arms around him, and the smell of lilacs and rain filled the universe. It doesn't matter. She sobbed into his chest. The scent was still here. I never let the fire go out. Back in the narrow alley, the library of scents was quiet. I was sitting at the counter, polishing the small blue bottle. I could hear the music of the glass, the thousands of stories singing to each other. I picked up the gold watch David had left behind. It was heavy, but it felt cold and meaningless. I put it in a drawer with the other things people had left. A silk tie, a silver key, a diamond ring. People think they come here to buy a scent, but they really come here to leave a burden. The library is not just a place of memory, it is a place of letting go. I walked to the window and breathed in the night air. I could smell the rain, the wet stone, and somewhere far away, a tiny hint of lilacs. I smiled. My job was done for today. Another soul had found its way home. Today, I want you to take a moment for yourself. Put down your phone, turn off the screen, close your eyes, and take a deep, slow breath. What do you smell? Is it the coffee in your cup? Is it the wood of your desk? Or is it a memory you have been trying to forget? Do not be afraid of the scents that make you cry. They are the secret keys to the rooms we have locked in our hearts. Success is not what you can see with your eyes or count with your fingers. Success is the courage to remember who you truly are. It is the ability to find your way back to the garden, no matter how far you have wandered. Memory is never lost. It is just waiting for the right breath. The world is a library of whispers. Are you ready to listen? Thank you for finishing this journey with me on Learning English Every Day. The story of the Library of Sense reminds us that our senses are more than just tools, they are bridges to our soul. Amy showed David that wealth can be a cage, but a single breath of truth can set you free. Please, share this story with someone you love. Remind them that they are enough and that their home is always within reach. Practice these final words today: cobalt, redemption, lilacs, hesitant, blossom. I will see you in the next story. Keep breathing. Keep learning. Goodbye.